Hello everybody and welcome to the second lecture in Psychology 205. We are still talking about science. We are talking about the components and canons of science today. And science is a special way of knowing things. It's a special way of experiencing the world, moving through our world in a skeptical, objective, yet open-minded way of thinking about things. So what do we mean by objective? By objective, I mean that we use a method or a set of procedures that removes the bias that we all as human beings bring with us to anything that we observe. Any situation that we come across and we observe something, we're going to bring our own perceptions and assumptions to it. So if we use the scientific method, then it allows us to maintain those biases, yet separate us from the observations, and so therefore we are safe from that those influences. Science is skeptical, open-minded, data-driven, and objective. I just talked about the objectivity. What do I mean by skeptical? Well, I mean that science demands evidence. It's questioning. It does not take immediately for granted that something is true. So you keep an open mind, you always ask why, and it's related to being data driven. And data driven just means that you need evidence, that you want to examine exactly what is the evidence before you make a decision. So, for example, if you're going to buy a car, what kind of information do you need to make your decision about buying that car? Do you just care about what color it is? Do you want to know the gas mileage? Do you ask your friend what kind of car he or she has? Do you just like the way a car feels to sit in, or is it status? What kinds of things do you look for in a car, and what kind of information do you need? So ask yourself, next time you're making a decision or someone tells you something, are you demanding evidence before you make an opinion or make a decision? Science has to be open-minded as well, just because there's some funky stuff out there, and we always have to be able to embrace the possible, even if it is unlikely. All right, so those are the components of science. And science also has 4 basic canons. And a lot of people think that psychology is not a science. Clearly it's a science. I'm wearing a lab coat. that proves it, right? That's a way of knowing that it's authority, and that therefore you should not question it or be skeptical whatsoever. I'm kidding. All right, so the 4 canons of science are determinism, empiricism, parsimony, and testability. Determinism means that events have causes. It just means that we believe that if something happens, there's some force that caused it. My son gave me the example that gravity made the girl fall off the cliff. Take a second and think about your own example of something causing something else. And that's what determinism is. Empiricism means, again, as we talked about last time, direct experience with something. So, for example, if a scientist believes that fear causes affiliation, or if you just personally have noticed that people are banding together in a storm rather than wanting to be alone, then maybe that is more powerful about the hypothesis that people, when they're afraid, want to be with others. That might be more powerful if you see it yourself than if you just read about it on the news. A bunch of people were stuck in a tornado and they got together and they hung out. That's more, if you are personally there and experience that, that's much more powerful than just seeing it on TV. So empiricism is another canon of science. Parsimony is another one. It means basically simplicity. If there are 2 competing theories about whatever, then we take the more parsimonious or the simpler of the 2 theories. So, for example, again, and going back to the belief and the ways of knowing things, let's take Santa Claus. There are 2 possible ways that the presents can appear under the tree. Either the parents buy the presents and put them under the tree, or Santa travels across the world in a single night in a sleigh with reindeer pulling it in the sky and delivers presents to everyone through their chimneys and sliding glass doors in Florida, since we don't typically have chimneys. And those are our two explanations. Scientists would tend to say the parents probably bought the presents. But again, that's just skepticism. That's the belief of science. Again, take the simpler of the two. Finally, testability. Science depends on something being testable. That means we have to be able to validate it or show that it's true. We have to be able to falsify it. We have to be able to show that it's false. And this is something that's really, really hard for people to get because we're not used to trying to falsify something or disprove it. And finally, it needs to be explained. So, for example, Freud's theory that you probably have heard of the id, ego, and superego is parts of our development, these invisible forces within us that essentially make up our personalities. Brilliant theory, very comprehensive, the most comprehensive theory of personality, yet completely untestable. You can't test whether we have an id, ego, or superego. You can't observe them. You can't see them. So you have to make sure that your theory or whatever it is that you're examining is something that's testable. Now, science tries to disprove and not prove theories. Because we are focusing on trying to falsify things, we hesitate to say that we've ever proven something. So a lot of times in class I'll get on you if you say, well, they prove this or they prove that, because in science we don't like to say we've proven anything. Rather we say we have evidence for this, or a hypothesis was supported, or the data suggest, or we think this is true. But because theories are always testable and disprovable, we never can say for sure that they are absolutely true, even though all of the evidence for hundreds of years has, backed up a specific theory. It's still possible that some piece of evidence could come across and disprove that. So take a minute and think of what it means or what is involved in testing something to see if it fails. And that's the basis of falsifiability and testability. And that's it for now. Thanks.